Welcome to the Steal a Moment podcast with me, Michael Bois. Today's guest is NFL wide receiver Bennie Fowler, one-time Super Bowl champion with my Denver Broncos, and a entrepreneur coach using the GPS method, as well as a host of the Quiet Time podcast with Bennie Fowler. Man, Bennie was an awesome guest, a fantastic story to tell of hard work and perseverance, and kind of describe some of the best receivers he's lined up next to, as well as what it's like to catch passes from four potential and most likely locked in Hall of Famers. We also get into the conversation of leadership and also how sports can teach you skills that will help you through your lifetime as we progress down the road to life after football. He has a plan in place for that as well, which is an amazing cause for him. And I'm proud to call Bennie a friend, and I'm happy that we were able to get a chance to talk, and hopefully we can talk again soon as he makes his next progression from here. Spent the last season with the New Orleans Saints and played a couple of years with the New York Giants. Broke into the league with the Denver Broncos after going to school at Michigan State with Golden State Warriors, arguable one of their best players, Draymond Green, which we talk a little bit about as well. But thank you guys for tuning in and listening to this podcast. Thanks again to Spreaker.com for helping this podcast get monetized, which is fantastic. Thank you guys for listening to those episodes on Apple Music and Spotify and anywhere else you guys can. We're finally back on Google Podcasts. I got that fixed last week, so super happy about that. If you guys haven't yet and you're watching this on YouTube, please click the little subscribe button right here and click the bell notifications to let you know that episodes are coming. They come every Friday, but we may change the schedule if performances are improving in different areas. Following that up as well, if you guys have anything to say it in the comments below. We've seen a downturn in comments, and I'd like to hear what you guys say. If you're going to watch this at the intro, leave a comment and let me know that you're listening. I want to know who you are as well. So please leave a comment there. If you're listening on Apple Music, please rate and review. Give me that 5-star rating so we can get this into the rotation there as well. And same with Spotify. Give a little bit of a review. Dropping on Wednesday, which is today when I'm recording this intro, Gunpowder Empire has a new cover for Cold by Crossfade, a year 2000 hit that Sean and I used to do back in the day when we had an acoustic project on the side, which is what Gunpowder Empire is now, acoustic project and an electric project. And we've got a myriad of really sick covers coming up for you guys, including some new originals that we're going to start working on as well here in 2021. But make sure to follow us on the YouTube page and head over to our Facebook, Instagram, all of those at Gunpowder_Empire. I'll have all the links. All the links are in the description below. Our YouTube channel of the week. If you guys have not heard of and are sports fans, but if you've not heard of Urinating Tree, you need to check this guy out. This dude is a hardcore Pittsburgh sports fan who has really created an interesting niche and, presents some really cool ideas and approaches it as a real fan would, getting frustrated with some of the crazy things that happen in sports and really just a fun guy to listen to rant and rave a little bit here and there. And I'm a huge fan of this guy. So be sure to head over there, Urinating Tree. I'll have the link in the description as well. Also, quick shout out to Chick as well. Our first episode of The Forest is up on her channel. We did a little stream event a couple weeks ago, and she's slowly cutting together the episodes, which is awesome because that's what makes this fun and exciting for both of us. But if you guys want to, go ahead and head over to her channel. The link is in the description as well. She's seen a little bit of growth, which is awesome. I'm excited for her there, and hopefully we can do a little translate, cross promote, and make everything great. I think I got all the housekeeping out of the way, so I appreciate it to all of you guys for checking in with us. We got some great artists coming up here in the next few weeks as well. So, with that being said, Benny and I would like to steal a moment. So how are you doing? How's everything now that the season's over for you and things are starting to kind of turn towards the off season? What's the plans for next year? Or are you staying in New Orleans? Looking for another team? What's the plan for next year?
Yeah, so right now the plan is just to see what free agency has to offer. I'd love to go back to New Orleans and play. I loved and enjoyed that culture. So, right now it's just taking it one day at a time. And I have what I do in the off season and what I'm going to transition into in my post career, which is helping small business owners, entrepreneurs work on their business instead of in their business and helping them gain the momentum to grow their business.
Right. That was leads into my next question perfectly. So it looks like you have established a nice post-career plan already in the midst of your career. And also I do have your book right here, Silver Spoon. You guys
I appreciate you getting that. Thank
Of
you.
course, it was a great read. It was worth definitely picking up. I enjoy reading books from athletes and entertainers and people in general who kind of have a different outlook outside of the game they play. So it was nice to kind of see that you implemented the skills of what you do on the field into aspects of life, such as business, focus, education, everything. How have the relationships from the people within these stories kind of tied into what you're planning to do after you finish your career?
Yeah, a lot of sports and a lot of different things all go into business and into life. The things that I've learned throughout football, the things that I've learned throughout those people, from those people in that book, I can transfer into my coaching and helping these entrepreneurs and helping these small business owners see the importance of teamwork, helping them understand the importance of setting a goal and then reverse engineering it backwards to go achieve it. It's super important. The reason why athletes tend to be more disciplined and they tend to stay in shape is because of the environment that they have around them, the people that they have around them. But it's very clear on what they want. There's a win or there's a loss. There's a championship or you're not a champion. And there's certain ways to go about it. It's certain strategic ways to go about it. And the same things can be applied in business and in life.
Exactly. And I think that's the importance of the mindset of any athlete really is understanding that, you have an inevitable goal in every sport. In football, on the offensive side, it's to score a touchdown. In basketball, it's to put the ball in the basket. On the defensive side, it's preventing the other team from doing those things. For me as a musician, the goal is to create the audio, make the music, and then have other people digest it. It doesn't come out any other way. We have to make it in order for people to hear it. So you have to have the discipline to practice the skill, implement the skill, and then put it out for other people to see. And I think that's one of the takeaways I took from the book was like the value of hard work, the value of a work ethic. And that's something that I think a lot of athletes who are successful, whether they be marquee names like a Drew Brees, like a Peyton Manning, or a guy on the practice squad who fights his way up to get on the field and then ends up catching, Peyton Manning's final pass of his career.
Yeah. A lot of things are similar. The work ethic is there and there's a goal there and there's a process there. And it's all about what's the ultimate outcome? What's the ultimate vision for your life? When you're talking about that music that you're talking about, what's the ultimate vision that you want for that? That's what helps people to move forward, but they have to have an ultimate vision. Sometimes when I'm talking to clients and I ask them, where do they want their business to be in 3 to 5 years? They don't even think that far ahead. They usually just think to the next year. But if you have that vision for your life, it's easy to get those goals done in that 1 year and more.
Right. And then you can establish benchmarks throughout that time frame, right? So you have that
Absolutely.
5-year goal, and then you establish smaller benchmarks that'll lead you to that goal no matter what, because you have that end goal in mind and the target overall of where you're trying to lead to.
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
One thing that definitely changed my mind while reading your book, I'm a diehard Denver Nuggets fan. I've been a diehard Denver Nuggets fan my entire life. And I have hated Draymond Green since
Wow.
because of the attitude on the court and the way, but like listening to your stories about him and like talking about him as a leader and then listening to what he said. I actually went through and looked up that Steph Curry interview afterwards. And I was like, oh man, like, so he's just an energy guy. Like on the floor, he makes everybody stronger. What aspects of that do you see in the outside world, like business industry, people who are kind of an aggressive face, like a Draymond Green, who brings the energy every day and kind of gets under your skin a little bit, but kind of pushes you to do more? Have you seen that on other sides of the spectrum outside of sports in general?
Yeah, definitely. My dad is an intense guy in terms of business, and he rose up to become one of the vice presidents of Ford. And he has an intense nature, not in a yelling at you type of way, but he's very disciplined. He's very strategic. He knows how to go about his business. But even if you look at a Steve Jobs, from what people say about him and just his intensity, that's why Apple is where it is, because of that creativity, the intensity that he had. And I think that's super important for any great leader. You don't have to be intense all the time. There's so many different types of leadership, but what do your employees respond to? What do your teammates respond to? Obviously, when Draymond steps on the court, his leadership speaks for itself. The fact that they've won 3 championships and how confident he is in just the way he plays, even when he's not on the court. There are just so many different things, but leadership can look so many different ways. But in business, yes, there's definitely the same type of people.
And the interesting thing is I looked back at those teams, those Warriors teams, and the one team with him on it that couldn't get it done was the team he was suspended for those last couple games against Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
And, you thinking about that as a whole, you're like, if the leader is gone and those guys can't seem to find that extra gear that he seems to push them to, sometimes that happens. And I can see that from a perspective of the business that I'm in. I work not only in this as a podcast, since I'm my own boss and I push myself to put out content and make sure that it's edited, but I work in the advertising field as well. And I have several bosses who all lead differently. And those different leaders all push a different portion of me depending on what needs to be done. And I think that that's as important as anything as we look at how worlds change and things change, businesses change, the way you have to market changes, the way you develop changes, how you find funding, everything changes as we're in a very volatile part of the world now. How are you implementing that into portions of your practice as a coach now? How do you help businesses find different methods of looking for those in particular changes?
Google. It's, a lot of us, we always trying to find the answers, and we're always trying to look in these unique places, but sometimes the answers are right in front of us. And, we get creative, we brainstorm so many different ideas, and that's the best part about a coach. If you think about it in terms of sports, Michael Jordan didn't need Phil Jackson to score more points. He needed him to win championships. And that's what my coaching style is like. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Your business is already successful. You already have the mindset, but I'm here to point out the blind spots and help you understand and see things in a different way. But sometimes the answers are right in front of us. And that's one of the things that I help my business owners, entrepreneurs understand, is that, like, where's the low-hanging fruit? And that's the same thing in sports.
Yeah, you got to find the opportunities where they present themselves. You look at guys like, to tie that into sports, look at a guy like Terrell Davis. Davis was a seventh round pick who started on the special teams, made a hit in a game in Japan the day before he thought he was going to quit playing football, and then becomes one of now 8 2,000-yard rushers, 9 2,000-yard rushers in NFL history, Hall of Famer, and 2-time Super Bowl champion. You have that pedigree behind you and the wherewithal and the will to battle. I mean, coming from Michigan State, playing on those teams that were dominant, playing with a group of guys that are, solid in that same mindset, taking that mindset out of college into the pros, battling yourself to get on a roster, work your way into a position where you're now, a guy who comes in as a 2-3 wide receiver, helping out teams that need the depth, need the growth, need the leadership in that position. What is that like for you, knowing that you've been with different teams, different organizations? Do you see the differences between those businesses technically as the leadership from, like, say, Denver to New York to New Orleans? Have you seen a difference in how they are structured?
Yeah, every organization is structured different. Obviously, every organization has an owner, general manager, but everything is structured different. All the head coaches, I had 3 head coaches in Denver. I had John Fox, Gary Kubiak, as well as Vance Joseph. In New York, I had Pat Shermer. And then in New Orleans, I had Sean Payton. Sean Payton had the most unique leadership, and he had some of the best leadership I've ever been around in terms of culture. Gary Kubiak had an incredible culture, and that's why we won the championship with him. But it's different in all different organizations that I've been in. But the leadership, the most successful teams I've been on, the leadership comes from the top down, and it's all the communication is transparent. You have to have transparent communication if you're going to be a leader, or if you're going to have whatever your role is in the organization. And I've been able to fill my roles in the organizations and teams that I've played with because of the transparency of my coaches and understanding who I am as a person. It comes down to who you are when you're trying to figure out your role. Figure out who you are. What do you do best? And stick to that.
Who's the best wide receiver you've ever lined up next to?
Man.
That's
a hard one. That's a hard one just because they're all uniquely talented in so many different ways. You have a guy like Emmanuel Sanders who's had some of the quickest feet I've ever seen. Then you have a guy like a Demaryius Thomas who really doesn't have any flaws within his game. And then you have the most talented receiver that I've ever seen, most talented football player that I've ever seen in Odell Beckham. Then you have a guy like Sterling Shepard. It's so many different people that I've lined up next to that I can call teammates that are, just change the game in so many different ways that are just dominant. But, my rookie year, I saw Demaryius have like 275 yards in one game. And it's just like, how did he do that? But then I played with Odell, and he goes through practices and games where he's catching the ball with one hand. It's just like, it's so unique. And then, you play with a Michael Thomas who caught 150 passes. Now, he got hurt this year when I was playing with him, but, his work ethic and the way he practices and goes about his business is different too.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was hoping you'd say, because I like the idea that they all have unique skill sets. And that's something that I think even in business we look at. You look at how, there's a difference between a Cole Beasley and a Stephon Diggs. There's a difference between you and Emmanuel Sanders. There's a difference between, Adam Thielen and Jefferson. Like, everybody has their needs, their roles, their functions. That's the position of everything in sports. Not everybody can play quarterback. Not everybody can play wide receiver. Just like not everybody can be a CEO. Not everybody can be a manager. You need everybody to fill their roles. Is that a big part also of what you're talking about with your coaching, making sure everybody knows their role and their positioning and what they're supposed to do?
Yeah, because once you know who you are and what you stand for and what your values are, it's easier for you to live and go and achieve those goals. It's easy for me once the coach is transparent for me to go out there and run through a wall. Or I always talk about the first time that I ever met Peyton, and I'm walking into the locker room as a rookie. I'm super nervous and I'm trying to act like I'm busy putting things away in my locker. And he comes in the locker room and he reaches his hand out and said, "Hey, I'm Peyton." I'm just like, I know who you are. Like, you're the guy from the Nationwide commercials. I'm just kidding. But the fact that he did that did a lot for me. And that's the leadership I'm talking about. That's the role I'm talking about because, of course, I knew who he was, but the fact that he came out of his way to do that and show that I was a part of the team meant a lot to me. And it ended up, forming this relationship and this trust eventually built over 2 years to where I caught his last pass. So I think knowing your role, knowing who you are, and identifying who you are. That's why I also do a part of life coaching. People think that it's all about their business and moving their business forward. You can't. It's going to be hard to move your business forward if you can't move your life forward.
Yeah. Another one of your fellow teammates is a good friend of mine, Ryan Harris.
Okay. Yes.
I worked with him at Altitude when he first got on the air there with Nate Kreckman back in, I think that was 2017 now. So it's been about almost 4 years. But he talks a lot about being able to establish yourself before you can really push anything else, and investing in what you invest in and making sure that you're aware of like where your money's going, how you're functioning as a person, so that you can establish a better you in terms of financial security, business prowess, and being able to know what your limits are and how to expand them. Is that also kind of a philosophy you look into with part of your coaching, helping with financial literacy and focus on how to make sure you're kind of stable and safe? Or are you kind of past that part and working more towards pushing them to the next level?
I come from a holistic approach. So it's not just about growing your business. When it is, or when it does come to growing your business, that could be the area that you want to focus on when you're coming to coaching, is your finances. I really show up and I meet the person where they are. Now, if their finances are good, there's no point for me to touch on that unless they want to touch on that. But I think that is a super important part. And Ryan Harris has a great background and understanding of financial literacy and wealth. And if a client wants to attack that in terms of their business or their life, then yeah, we definitely brainstorm some ideas. I put them in contact with some of the right people and we go from there.
That's the important thing is knowing, building that network, and also growing how you expand your network and work towards expanding it to help benefit yourself and eventually help others. I think that's one of the most important things I learned in media school specifically, was how important your network really is. You can develop relationships with people and your impressions are important, but you have to remember that you need to maintain and nurse those relationships so that wing doesn't fall off or that little portion doesn't change. How important is the relationships you developed over your lifetime to you, in sense of like, have you been able to maintain the networks that you need to help grow your business as well for your post career?
Absolutely. And actually, Draymond and I were sharing the stage the other day on an app. And one of the things that he talked about was relationship capital is the most important capital that you can have. And this world is all about who you know and the connections you make, but meaningful connections, not just, hey, let's connect on LinkedIn or, shaking hands through passing, taking the time out to actually have a conversation, enjoy what this person is talking about, giving some feedback in terms of, what they're saying, and actually listening and giving back in terms of that. But yes, relationships are everything. And that's what's helped me grow my business. And that's what's it's going to help me to continue to grow my business, is because referrals and relationships and what you give and what you give back.
Exactly. And it's interesting too, because I feel like if you don't have a little bit of, even if it's in a business sense, having just a little interpersonal connection with somebody is vitally important. So having like a moment of making sure everybody's doing well, checking in every once in a while, being like, how's the family? How are the kids? How's everything going? What can I do to help you right now? Or even just a quick text message here and there to keep harnessing those relationships is always important. I know as a musician, I still check in. I got to tour for a little while, got to do the fun thing that musicians always want to do. And I check in with the bandmates that I toured with and the bands that I toured with every once in a while, just to keep those relationships open, let them know that I'm thinking about them. And, and sometimes it's important because I could make a call tomorrow and be like, hey, we need, is it possible you could get here, or could we send you something to help fix this, or see what you see about this and give us some input? Because it's important. It's important to have those relationships and those connections.
Yes, absolutely. No doubt about it. It's always going to be the most important thing, because at the end of the day, we're human beings. And that's what we love the most, is we love connecting, and that's what we want the most. We want to connect and love other people.
Right. And it's always fun to kind of lean back and see how much things have changed in some of those relationships, like how that person has changed, how you've changed, and how those changes can benefit you as a person overall. I know that for me personally, doing this podcast has changed me a lot. It's made me a lot more vocal. So like made me a lot more open to any type of conversation. I'm willing to talk about more things and be more direct. It's also kind of fixed my speech pattern. I'm a little more careful about how I say things because it's a public platform. You know, I have to be careful about what I say, but not necessarily, or how I say it, not necessarily what I say, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Podcast is one of the best things that has helped my speech in the way I talk, the way I just go about holding conversation, pausing, not saying So yes, podcasting, and I tell people all the time, if you want to be a better public speaker, you have to talk all the time. And that doesn't mean necessarily talking conversations, but getting on a platform like this or going on Facebook Live and sharing things. That's one of the best things that you can do.
And I think it's vitally important too, because especially right now where we don't necessarily have the options to be in large crowds and be around people on a regular basis who are outside of our circles, we have to use these opportunities like this to be able to communicate with people and take advantage of the technology that's put in place in some aspects. Like you said, going on Facebook Live and communicating. I love your Monday moments. Those are some of my favorite things. It's the first thing I pull up in the morning. Usually.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much.
And it's interesting too, because sometimes I was hesitant when I first started this, because for clarification, and I've said this in 40 podcasts, so for all my regular listeners, I'm sorry. I wanted to start this 4 years ago, but I was too afraid and thought nobody wanted to hear anything I had to say, because I'm just a guy from Denver who has, you know, I'm in bands. I'm in a band. I've done some things. I had a radio show in college, in the media school. It was fun, but like, I never thought anybody would really want to hear what I had to say. When I got to this year and I had the extra time on my hands, I wanted to do something productive with it and find a way to kind of develop something that I've always wanted to do. So I took the leap and did this. And the one thing that I've learned through this is the worst thing anybody can say to you when you ask them, would you like to be on my podcast, is no. And guess what? That leaves you exactly where you were, except that you have information now that they can't do it, or they can't do it right now. And that's the most important thing I take away from this, is that rejection is just a part of life. And we have to understand that even if you feel like that point, you know, you said no, but you know, you can come back a year later, try again, see what happens.
Absolutely. That's no to me just means not yet or next one. That's the way I take it in terms of even when I'm doing coaching practices and people don't necessarily want coaching at that moment. Okay. They just don't want it. So on to the next conversation. And people in sales that might be listening to this, no just means next one or not yet. So that's a great approach to have. And I'm glad that you did go ahead and decide to do it. Why not share your voice? Why not share your story? Why not invite people on and have fun?
Exactly. And I've been able to, the cool thing is I've been able to talk to a lot of people I wouldn't be able to talk to regularly. Like, I don't know if you're based in Denver still or not, or if you're elsewhere, but like, I wouldn't be able to do this with a lot of the guests that I've had because they're in other places. I've been able to talk to bands and people in the UK, in Sweden, in Australia. You know, I'm trying to make this an international thing because it's fun that way. And I have those connections, which is great. But at the same time, I get to have personal conversations with people that I want to meet, and people I want to know, and people I've admired or looked up to or found an interest in over the years. Like, I loved your story, man. Like, even when you came to Denver, you were the first guy I kept on my Madden roster every year and like put in the game, made sure he was like a 2 or a 3. If Emmanuel ever sees this, I did trade him to put you in the number 2 spot once. I think it was like in 20, I think it was 20 Madden 16 or 17. So I'm sorry.
I appreciate that.
as we know, Big Ten football is the best football, right? I have to say
no
that
doubt.
out first. And it produces, what's interesting is, to me, like, the Big Ten produces players who kind of seem to have that work ethic. At least that's what it comes across to me. Guys like Bradley Roby, guys like Denzel Ward, guys like you, guys who come out of those schools tend to seem to be ready to drive and ready to push right as soon as they get into the NFL. What is it about the Big Ten culture that kind of brings that to fruition, I guess? Because it seems like I see that every time.
I think the coaches and just the nature of that conference, you have to work, you have to lift like that because it's a power conference. So your body has to be ready. So you get into that mode of being ready to work. But the coaches that are in that conference are super unique, and you have to be ready.
Yeah, because competition's top to bottom is pretty tough. I mean, even though Northwestern sometimes comes out of nowhere, they still put a team out that could beat a lot of teams in college football. And you have, Ohio State, Michigan State, the Staples, Penn State. But then occasionally, Purdue produces some pretty good players, like your quarterback in New Orleans. Speaking of that, you had, I read your post I think it was yesterday as the season came to an end, maybe it was a couple days ago, that you've caught passes from 3 Hall of Fame and future Hall of Fame quarterbacks. What is that experience like, knowing that you've had
four,
but
3 in games, because I played with Tom Brady too.
Oh, that's right.
For a week, but yeah, so 4 of them.
4 of them. What is that experience like, having those 4? And I'm assuming they're all pretty different in their approach to the game, I'm sure.
Yeah, they all are incredible leaders. They all are leaders and quarterbacks who prepare and leave no stone unturned. They leave no stone unturned. They're ready for any and every situation. Playing with Peyton was like studying for an exam every day. You had to be ready. And I was early in my career, so I was always nervous around them, because I was just like, wow, like, I'm playing with one of the best quarterbacks ever. Like, this is so cool. So that had a part in it. Eli, one of the most incredible leaders, just a very laid back guy, sit down, have lunch with you. Both of the Manning brothers are incredible storytellers. Tom Brady, even though it was a short amount of time, incredible competitor. He wants to compete on every drill and everything. And then Drew, preparation was just out of this world. Even just the way he warms up. He warms up for practice like he's getting ready for a game, a 3-hour game, and just ball placement was just incredible. But all of them, incredible leadership, incredible people, and they just know how to go about their business the right way. And they're super prepared, and they understand players, and they understand the game, and they know how to adapt and pivot in certain situations, but they're always prepared and ready.
And I think that's the important takeaway from that, is like being prepared. Preparedness is vitally important in any aspect of life. You have to kind of present yourself in a position where being able to, for me, it's researching before the podcast, making sure I have my information correct. I don't want to sound completely ridiculous when I talk. And, being prepared in life, putting yourself in a position where you are ready for anything, hopefully. And I know that's not possible for everybody all the time, but like that's something that I think is important as we push towards the next phase of whatever's coming for us. I mean, 2020 was an interesting year for a lot of reasons. A once in a century pandemic, a lot of unrest within the country. We put ourselves in a position where, I live in the heart of downtown Denver, so I got to experience the protests and everything here firsthand, and kind of see how different this kind of communication is coming across now, and how we're trying to do something different, hopefully. As we progress towards this next year, what are you seeing as what 2021 holds for us as people in general? Like, what are you seeing for your 2021 as a year of growth, hopefully.
Yeah, 2021 is going to be a prosperous year. It's going to be a year of connecting. It's going to be a year of growth. It's going to be a year of me giving back in terms of my coaching, in terms of the community. In terms of the country, I'm not sure because everybody has different missions, everybody has different visions, and it really just depends. But I'll be ready to adapt in any way. Like we just talked about being prepared. I think everybody should be prepared, but be ready to adapt as well. When you set goals and when you set a mission and vision for your life, you have to think about the consequences that can come along the way. What are the things that can get in the way so you are ready? And that's one of the things that I've learned about playing with those quarterbacks is to have that mission, to have that vision of the perfect game plan, but being ready to adapt for different blitzes or different turnovers that might happen.
So to kind of pivot away from what we've been talking about, let's talk a little bit more about the young Benny. So you grew up in Detroit, right? Or just outside of Detroit. So does that mean that you grew up a Pistons fan, or were you allowed to root for another team? Did you grow up a Lions fan? Where was your fandoms when you were younger?
I enjoyed the Pistons. I enjoyed the Lions as well. But I was a big Laker fan. Kobe Bryant was one of my favorite athletes of all time. So I loved the Lakers. So I was a big Lakers guy. Anytime the Lakers came to play in Detroit, my mom got tickets to take us to that game because Kobe was my favorite player.
That's fair. I mean, I'm a Nuggets fan, and I grew up in the era of them being really, really bad, and then them being really, really good, but not good enough to beat Kobe. So, 2009 still haunts everybody in Colorado. Anthony Carter is a curse word here still. But that's another guy who has had an incredible impact on the world of sports and the world in general, Kobe Bryant. Mm-hmm. We're coming up on a year. It's kind of hard to believe that it's been a year since all that happened in his passing and G's passing. But how do you think his lifestyle and like his mentality has kind of influenced another generation of young athletes and even entrepreneurs?
Yeah, just to have that mentality and that mindset, the Mamba mentality, and the quest to be the best version of oneself. And I think a lot of people are starting to adapt that even more now. And mental health and mindset is becoming such a staple in the U.S. I think Kobe did a great job in terms of leaving that legacy and helping athletes also understand that you can be more than just an athlete, and you can win an Oscar, and you can win an Emmy, and you can write a book. It's one of the reasons why I wrote my book and put my cover on, or my face on the cover of my book. And as Kobe had the cover, or the face of his face on the cover of his book. So he's inspired so many athletes and so many people. I mean, you just saw when he did pass, it was like the world stopped. It hasn't been a day like that in a long time. So he definitely touched a lot of people.
Yeah, and the amazing thing is no matter how much you hated watching him beat your team, you respected him for the way he played the game and the way he presented his life and the impact he had on the progression of the WNBA and his goals to keep trying to grow that league and move it forward, I think is another big aspect of why a lot of people respected him as he transitioned. And I mean, he is a human being who made a mistake early on in his life and has really spent a good majority of his life showing people that he was a better person than the one incident that occurred. And I think that that's an important takeaway for this modern era that we need to maybe start looking into, is that this idea, and I've brought this up with several other guests, is this idea of and it's changing now, but this idea of the cancel culture and the ability of going back through Twitter when you were 18 and seeing something stupid that was posted, or looking back at somebody in a different time period and culture. How do you think that that's going to impact the future of, say, like athletes on social media and the options and decisions they make as they progress in their careers?
It's just going to help them understand the importance of knowing what you say and being aware. Don't hit send. If you wouldn't want your mom to see it, don't hit send. So I think it's just going to bring more awareness. And at some point in time, it's not going to be acceptable to say, oh, hey, this happened when I was young. Like, the ramifications of social media and that nothing can be deleted. Everything is always there or in the cloud or any of that. So I think everybody should just be aware about what they're saying, regardless if you're a professional athlete or not. Things like that can be seen by companies. So have to be careful with things like that.
Exactly. And that's one of those things too, that we were taught at the media school, was if it's something you don't want your mom to see, it probably shouldn't be on the internet. And you need to work towards making sure, that's why I'm relatively quiet. I only post about the things that I'm promoting or the things that I'm doing, because in all honesty, I am a public figure in a way. Everybody it seems anymore who has a social media presence is a public figure. And that's
Yes.
I think the thing that a lot of people are kind of missing through this whole thing, is that we are, as a society now, allowed to have a voice, and we have to understand that there are consequences for that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You have to, yes, everybody is a public figure. That's how I tell everybody. Everybody's a leader. What you are saying, the way you carry yourself is being seen. It is being documented, maybe not on paper, but in somebody's mind. So if you might not get that job or that meeting, take a look at yourself and take a look at what you're saying or what you're doing.
And that is one of those things that I think not everybody pays attention to all the time. But that's the important thing, is like realizing that we are all in that position now, specifically because of the platforms that are presented to us. Changing gears again, because I'd like to keep it fresh and rolling differently. How interesting was it playing inside of empty stadiums this year? Was it kind of a weird experience at first? Was it an easy adjustment, or was it different?
Yeah, it was a lot different, just because football is a game that's driven off of emotion. So, running out there and there's no crowd out there, it's definitely a lot different. But it was very unique in terms of the trash talking out there, in terms of, it was more like a practice, a glorified scrimmage practice type of deal. But yeah, it was definitely different. And I don't ever want to be a part of not having fans at a game, just because the fans bring so much energy, and football is like a gladiator sport. It's an event that has, minimum of 50,000, 60,000 people in the NFL. So you get used to that, and that's something that I've never had to do. I've always played in front of people for as long as I can remember. So it was a little bit different, but teams adjusted, we adjusted. We went on to, have a 12-4 season, and we came up a little short, but at the same time, I thought it was a very unique year, and the NFL pulled it off in terms of, getting everything done.
How crazy is it seeing Alvin Kamara up close right next to him? Is that guy as insane of an athlete as it appears to be on film? I've only seen him from a television perspective.
Yeah, he's one of the most incredible athletes that I've played with, in terms of his balance, his speed, and he plays the game at his own speed. He doesn't slow down or speed up for anyone. He makes everybody play at his speed, and just his vision and his ability to play receiver, run the ball. I mean, we have him do so many different things. He can punt return, he can kick return. And, all you have to do is just find a way to get him the ball. And that's what, Sean did a great job of doing, was just getting Alvin the ball, getting him the ball in space, and then letting him and his athletic ability take over.
Yeah, it's crazy to watch that guy perform. I will say I had Michael Thomas as my number one pick in my fantasy draft this year. It was tough to see him hurt as a person and as a fantasy owner. But I still won the championship, so I give it all to Michael Thomas on that one.
Congratulations to you. Congratulations to you.
Yeah, it was partly too. I picked up Emmanuel on the couple big weeks that he had as well. So I say the Saints won me a championship this year, as well as a guy like Nick Chubb, who is also fun to watch as well. Although, those SEC guys, we gotta be careful about talking about them too much. They get enough press as it is.
Absolutely.
That's another interesting question. So, what do you think about the transition of a guy like Urban Meyer, who has been a stable and a staple of the college football world at Florida, at Ohio State, at Utah, now making the transition to the NFL after a couple of years outside of the college game? Do you think his mindset and mentality can transition maybe to the NFL?
That's yet to be seen. It's yet to be seen. And I think if he can adapt, because you're not going to be able to yell at college or NFL players the way you yell at college players. You're not going to be able to have the same amount of time with NFL players that you have with college players. And there's just so many different personalities in these players, and some of these players have more money than you, so you can't really control them and dictate their time and where they're going. So he's a great coach, though, and a great leader, and he's been successful everywhere he's gone. So I am going to say that he is going to be successful, but if he can't adapt, that's because he tried to use a college style with pro players, and that just doesn't work. But I think he will do an incredible job in terms of his leadership because he is a great leader.
I agree. I have a lot of Ohio State friends here. I apologize on that front as well. They are all sorry.
No worries. I never really lost to Ohio State, so no problem with me.
That's fair. That's fair. But the funny thing that we've been joking about is that now that he's in Jacksonville, that means that he's going to take Justin Fields, and then Trevor Lawrence is going to go to the Jets anyway. So
No chance.
No way. No way.
No chance.
It's also that's another thing. How do you think these young quarterbacks in this new age, because it feels like that's changed also in the last maybe decade or so, is that if you are drafted in the first round, second round, you're kind of projected, like for instance, a guy like a Drew Lock here in Denver, or Josh Allen in Buffalo. You're looking at these guys who are these first, second round picks that are kind of thrust in these positions of being a starter. And then when they don't pan out immediately, like within the first year, people want to write them off as, oh, they're a bust, it's a waste. What do you think is the mindset of those guys as they progress like first, second, third year into hopefully what has happened to a Josh Allen, where he has had that consistency and able to become a potential Super Bowl competitor this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough for quarterbacks to have to go through that, but they have to show that promise. And I think Drew Lock has shown a lot of promise in terms of, from what I've seen, just his ability to throw the ball, his ability to extend the play. He looks like he has a swagger about him when I've seen him play. We haven't played against him, but he does look like he has that confidence, that swagger. They just got to win more games, and they have the weapons. So now that they have the weapons, it's now the spotlight is going to be all on him. But I think it is unfair for people to, after 2 years, to be looking to get rid of him. You got to let him work through the growing pains, and he's missed some games because he's been injured. So there's some things that he has to work through and that he has to learn, but he'll continue to learn. It's not like Peyton was just Peyton in his first couple of years. He led the league in interceptions. He threw 20-something picks. I don't know how many picks he threw, but he had to work through those growing pains, and then he became Peyton. So I think people just have to be patient. But in the social media era, it's 1 year you got to show that you're this or that or you're a bust. But even with Mitchell Trubisky, he had a great year, then he had a down year, and now everybody's ready to get rid of him because they thought they had a Super Bowl winning team. Like, you just can't do that. So every team has to adapt year to year, and there's a reason why Mitchell Trubisky got drafted the way he did, or as high as he did. And he has that talent and that ability. And so does Drew Lock. So I think people just have to be patient.
I 100% agree. I just wanted someone else to say it besides me. I've been getting crushed in my circles of friends for saying how important it is to be patient with talent like a Drew Lock. And it's interesting. I'm also all for consistency. I feel that that's something that has changed a lot in modern NFL. Maybe you can speak to this as well. How quickly coaching staffs change and teams change and organizations change. You have a guy like Sean Payton on your sideline who's been the head coach in New Orleans for 10 years, 15 years almost?
14
years. So you have
15, that. 14, 15 years since 06.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have that consistency. He's been there that whole time. You have a guy like Mike Tomlin. You have a guy like Andy Reid, these established names who've been in these locations for extended periods of time. How important do you think consistency is for young players like a Drew Lock as they progress into that next stage of their career as a veteran in a sense?
Yeah, you just have to show that growth. You have to show that growth and consistency. I think one of the biggest things that Andy Reid has done, or Sean when he got there, is that they started winning, within the first couple of years. Doug Peterson, they won within the first couple of years. Even Gary Kubiak, when he came to Denver, we won in the first couple of years he was there. So I think that's the most important thing is you have to show the consistency, but you have to show that accelerated growth. The reason Patrick Mahomes came here my last year in Denver, the last game of the season, and he showed why he was a first round pick. Then they were like, all right, it's easy for us to move on from Alex Smith, Andy Reid, make it work. This is what you're here for. And he did make it work.
At this point of the show, this is where we let you promote anything you need to promote. And right now, Benny, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I don't really need to promote anything. You guys can find me on LinkedIn at Bennie Fowler. You can find me at BennieFowler1.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn. Instagram is Beanz, BEANZZ 16, as well as that is the same thing on Twitter. So, hey, I really appreciate you having me on the show. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Benny. I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Yeah, thanks, Benny. Take care, man. Have a good one.
It almost feels like someone else is living my life. 'Cause it almost